Hey guys, thanks for joining the community meeting for Harbor. So today's agenda, first, I'm gonna give you some update regarding the release and the progress of V2.2. And after that, I'll pass to Shikar, my colleague, to give us a presentation regarding how he hosts Harbor to provide service to the VMware employees. Yeah, and that's it. This week we released version 2.1.3, which includes two important fixes. The first one is a security issue we found that user can use developer role to delete image via the V2 API. Yeah, thanks for the community. Let me share my screen. Yeah, this is this one. In addition to that, we also fixed the issue that Docker 20.10 seeing this empty header issue when pulling via the proxy cache project. So we highly recommend you bump up the Harbor to fix these issues. And now that's for the patch release. And for the version 2.2, we have feature completed, and currently we are working to groom some of these bugs and issues and doing more system level test. And if things go well, we're gonna tag RC by the end of the month or early February. And hopefully we have a GA in the early or mid February. So that's the update for version 2.2. And meanwhile, we are starting to plan for the next version 2.3. So if you have any feature or idea you think it's important and you want it to be implemented in version 2.3, it's a good opportunity for you to open issue or raise this requirement to us so that we can discuss together and see if we can implement that in version 2.3. Okay, so that's the update for the open source release. And now I'm gonna pass to my colleague Shikar to give us the sharing. Shikar.
Very good. Thank you, Daniel. Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to hear me. So let me share my screen. Okay. So share, and let me sort of put it into presentation mode. Ah, sorry. Oh, wrong one. Okay. Does everyone see Harbor as a service at VMware?
Yep.
Okay, yep. Very good. So let me sort of start off by sort of talking about the why. So why does VMware need its own container registry services? So first of all, VMware business units often they use a variety of external services to distribute their containers. So they use either bin tray from JFrog, they use Docker Hub, they use a registry from your favorite public cloud provider, ECR, GCRs, and what so forth. So the universe of how containers are distributed at VMware is very distributed. I mean, as a result, this reliance on third-party distributions has lots of issues. It's inefficient because we are not able to standardize. Obviously, many of these services are commercial, so they cost money, and probably the biggest issue is that it adds risk to the overall business. So we are probably most everyone I hope is aware of, for example, Docker Hub announced that as of November 1st, 2020, that all free accounts would be limited in terms of their pull volume. So depending upon, and it would be by number of pulls per unique IP address. So for some, like an enterprise like VMware, where all the external visible IPs is so few in number, this causes a lot of hardship. Similarly, even on the commercial services, Bintray from JFrog has recently been EOL'd, and they're being replaced by a new service called Artifactory SaaS. So this causes friction among the development teams in terms of having to change all of their pipelines because they have to migrate to a new service. So, and finally, VMware wants to get a better control over its own digital supply chain and external distribution. They want to understand much better from a governance point of view, what's being distributed when we're pulling containers, what are the different layers, what are the different artifacts that we're pulling from the different sources, so that we can track and make sure that what we distribute to our customers, we have full visibility and there's nothing being pulled that's hidden from us. So this is the question on the why. So what did we do? So we stood up actually two separate instances of Harbor for separation of concern and risk mitigation. This happened in mid-October of last year. Uh, we've deployed them in VMware data centers in the US, one in California and the other one is in Washington. These are our two main data centers for the company, and instances are deployed in an active mode. So we have active failover if one data center or anything in one instance has an issue. So we actually called these instances by different names for ease of uh, differentiation, so that we can understand what people are using them for. So one is called Corporate Harbor. This is purely for internal access for builds. It's also configured as a proxy cache to Docker Hub. As of last week, we were seeing 400,000 plus weekly pulls through the proxy cache. It just gives you an indication of sort of the amount of volume that VMware was sort of using from a third party, which in a way was very surprising to us. I mean, we knew as a company that we made extensive use of Docker Hub, but seeing these type of numbers, and this has been growing on a weekly basis since we implemented the proxy cache in mid-October. Right now, as of end of last week, as of last Friday, there were 220 projects hosted within this instance and almost 1,900 repos. And that number is just continuing to grow on a weekly basis. We have a second instance, which we call Distribution Harbor, and this one is externally exposed, and it allows artifacts to be accessed by customers and partners. So again, this is to remove the dependency on third-party registries. So particularly for open source projects, many of the VMware business units is looking to potentially start using Distribution Harbor versus other third-party sources for distributing their open source artifacts into the public domain. So those are the two instances we have. They're both identically configured in terms of release. They're both running right now 2.1, and we are actually actively waiting for 2.2 to get released and go GA, because in addition to the 20.10 Docker client fix that is there in 2.2, which is also in 2.13, we also want to add we also want to have a bunch of other features, which we'll talk about, that are targeted for the 2.2 release. So we're eagerly awaiting that. So this is a very busy slide, but I think the main point that I would like to get across to the community is that within VMware, we are a very strong component of dog fooding. In other words, we like to use what we build and what we sell to our customers. So this is the underlying infrastructure that our Harbor instances are deployed on. So we have deployed on vSphere. with Kubernetes with three master nodes, and we are able to scale up the worker nodes as we need to. The networking underlying it is NXT, and since we are a large enterprise, I mentioned that redundancy is key for us and availability. We do this by deploying multiple master nodes in the control plane as well as multiple worker nodes. We also take it a step further. For example, we have anti-affinity rules set up for the vSphere cluster to ensure that not all of the master node VMs are not on the same CPU. So we want to make sure that if any type of single point of failure does not take down our entire instance. And finally, for example, we know that for Kubernetes, etcd is the heartbeat of the entire cluster. So what we do is that we manually, not manually rather, but regularly sort of snapshot the etcd database so that we're able to roll back and reinstall if anything happens to happen to etcd. So again, I can go into details on each one of these points, but just to reiterate from our deployment, we are running the entire VMware Tanzu stack for Harbor. And as of when we went live in mid-October, we have not seen any downtime as of yet. So we're very pleased with this. So in terms of operational support, as I mentioned, we're maintained as a production level service within IT. So what does that mean? So we have 24/7/365 monitoring of the entire infrastructure. That includes the underlying Kubernetes, as I mentioned, the storage, which is a cloud native storage and CPU, as well as the entire network path is checked regularly. That's firewall, load balancer, the uh, the WAF, the DNS, all of that is sort of regularly checked. We have heartbeats going through to do pulls every minute through our Harbor instances, as well as checking for performance. We have Slack on the right. I'm just showing a little bit of a screenshot. We actually have a notifications page where we actually show all of the different major services that we offer in the within our engineering services, and Harbor, both instances are available, so you can subscribe. Users can subscribe to that. So if there's any change in operational performance, they'll get a notification through Slack and email. And on the bottom, I'm showing you just a picture of the Tanzu monitoring, just to show how we're monitoring the Kubernetes as well. So we are actively treating this as a key critical IT service, just like any of the other services that we offer within VMware for the engineering community, which we support. So that's sort of what we are today. Where are we going to tomorrow? So from the Harbor Registry support side, we are actively looking and waiting for support for additional proxy cache, such as ECR and GCR. And so that's targeted for 2.2, which we are very, as I mentioned, very interested in waiting for. The Kubernetes operator enabling day 1 and day 2 operations so that we can replace Helm chart for deployment. That's of interest to us. Of particular interest is the Prometheus integration in 2.2, because again, just to enhance our telemetry of what we're seeing and how we're doing active monitoring of these instances as we grow, this is of very big importance to us. Finally, more granular role-based access control is something that, especially since we have multiple groups that are actively monitoring and looking at the service, this will enable us to have better governance of who's accessing Harbor. From a service side, we are looking to expand our geographic footprint as needed. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we're deployed in 2 data centers in VMware for redundancy, but both of them is just a little bit of the geography. Both of them are on the west coast of the US, so it doesn't provide us with geographic coverage in terms of performance if we start to see issues with latency and throughput. So we are prepared to expand into EMEA and the APAC region with redundant nodes and do replication across all of the different sites if needed. at this point, we are not seeing the need so far. We actively ran scale tests and throughput performance, sustained throughput performance for large scale tests, for example, as average between 2 to 2.5 gigabits per region when we ran like large tests of 1,000 pulls from Hong Kong or Amsterdam. So we're keeping an eye on it, but we're prepared to expand as needed. And the other aspect that we're actively looking on is Harbor comes for vulnerability scanning, comes packaged with with Trivy and Claire, which is being deprecated. But VMware also has its own specific scanning requirements around open source and other things. So we're also looking and working with some of the teams within VMware to see how we could add those scanning options via the scanning plugin, an open API within Harbor, and add that so that when artifacts are uploaded and then pushed into Harbor, the scanning happens for that according to VMware requirements. So these are near-term things that we're looking at over the next sort of 6+ months, 6 months to 9 months. And then we will reevaluate our roadmap as we go forward, just like any other service. That's really all I have at this point. It was a short update of Harbor and how we're using it. We are very pleased with the response from the community, from the Harbor team, and actually from our users. Uh, the the growth has been essentially exponential in terms of user growth and sort of volume. And from what we are getting the feedback from our users that are using the services, they're generally been very pleased and appreciative of it. So I'm open to questions if anyone has any about the service, about Harbor. Please feel free.
I have one question regarding the deployment here. You talked about mid-October. You created distinct instances for separation of concern.
Mhm.
But of course, this was being planned long before this, and around mid-October, we also got the announcement from Docker around the Docker Hub throttling. What was the response from your users when that announcement happened, and what was your initial response?
So I would love to say that when we were doing the planning that we knew that Docker was going to make that announcement and we sort of were ready and able to go. I mean, as you mentioned, we were planning to launch it. And to be fair, the corporate Harbor internal instance was already running for a while before that. It was not like we just sort of stood it up in mid-October. It was there, but essentially by mid-October, we essentially went live in a big way. We've sort of evangelized to the internal community that the registry was up, that the proxy cache was configured, put into place all of the readmes and the documentation of how to create a registry, how to create your own service, the automation around creating your own project sort of in a self-service manner. That all happened around mid-October. So what we saw is that before mid-October, we had a number, we probably had 50 to 75 projects that people were using sort of on a playground basis. But what happened in sort of mid-October when sort of people started realizing that they couldn't sort of just almost, I would probably say use the word sort of without thinking, just go to Docker Hub and sort of have everything come in and and their pipeline started breaking. People started moving their production pipelines directly onto Harbor Registry. So it became much more than just a playground to try things out with.
So you could say it was kind of a forcing function as well to move into this.
Yeah, I mean, it was a forcing function as well. And from a VMware perspective, from a sort of a big company perspective, many of the groups were also looking at, hey, is that without something like this, maybe I'll just get a paid account with Docker, right? So multiply that out by a number of different groups. It doesn't, from a money, there's the monetary aspect, but again, one of the points for launching the service is that we as an organization, as a large enterprise, want to get better governance of what we're using and understanding what we're using. So by having everything go through the proxy cache and teams use it, actually we're seeing a lot of visibility of what people are using, which is actually something we never had before. We can see sort of the pull volumes. And for me as an administrator of the service, I find it interesting because you can sort of see that, oh, we're now started seeing, oh, a new project must have started up because now I see, for example, the Golang pull sort of like going through the roof, and this other project, the pull volume has sort of like died. I don't see anything there. So something, maybe they have what they need. So it is a sort of illuminating from just an internal perspective of what we're using.
That's really cool.
That's an interesting aspect.
Yeah, it is. And so, I mean, for the folks that are in VMware, I publish sort of like the weekly pulls and the main sort of the top pulls things just as an interesting thought. So, and there's a few things that come out of it because sometimes like we're pulling things that we're trying to sort of get away from a corporate reason for legal reasons or other reasons, yet we're still pulling artifacts from that. So that raises some eyebrows as well too.
Yeah, and that will be interesting, to using the data you have in the corporate harbor to analyze what technology is popular within our company, right? That would be an interesting topic, even for radio, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's for,
Yeah.
I mean, as an example, as sort of like we saw, for example, for a while, we saw sort of like Maven pulls sort of creeping up, and now they sort of slowed down to a crawl, right? So, okay, so it either means that we're not pulling, that people are getting away from Maven, or maybe they're just using the cache because it's populated. I mean, it's hard to sort of make clear sort of like a cause and effect sort of the determinations, but just to see that, oh, suddenly we're starting to see, for example, I mean, out of nowhere, for example, in mid-November, the number of Ubuntu pulls have gone through the roof. Okay, why? I don't know, but it has, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for the sharing. And do we have any other question for Shikar?
Yeah, Shikar. This is Steven Zhou from Harvard team. You mentioned in your slides, you mentioned that there will be some other scanning requirement from VMware. So, do we already have we already collected some requirement, or we just planning to collect some more requirement?
So actually, so from the VMware side, the OSPI team is already starting to experiment with the scanning API, and I know that there's a few things that they're working on. I think there's some tickets that they've opened with the Harbor team for there's things that they don't understand. So I can put you into that thread if you're not aware, but they have already started to play around with the API to understand how they could potentially use OSPI, which is essentially for the folks that are outside of the VMware. So OSPI is essentially our wrapper for Black Duck for open source scanning, so that we understand that when we're shipping any type of commercial products, what open source packages were we using, what versions are we using, just to make sure, from a visibility commercial aspect, as well as that are we using the right version. So Stephen, to your question, they have started to engage. Milena's team has started to engage with the API, and I know that there's been some tickets open into Harbor for some issues they've had.
Oh, so the team is from Carbon Black.
No, this is actually the old the VES CPE team that so this is not Carbon Black. This is open source scanning that they're starting to look at, not so much of vulnerability or static code scanning.
Okay, because I talked to Carbon Black team, they also working on a adapter to introduce their Carbon Black capability into Harbor to do the scanning work. So I thought. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, so put me in touch with them. So I did not know that was happening.
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody?
Yeah, I have a question, but not very related to Harbor. You mentioned that you do regular snapshots for SCD for your Kubernetes cluster. Is there any incident happened that you had to, roll back to the snapshot?
Not yet.
Really? Not yet. Okay.
I mean, so actually, I mean, we are actually running. I mean, again, on a shared cluster. So we don't have a dedicated cluster for Harbor, but this is a shared IT cluster that runs a lot of sort of critical IT applications like Help Now, which is sort of our internal ticketing system and a few other things. So this is a critical cluster. So we are maintaining this because a lot of other things depend upon it. So in terms of rolling back from the snapshot, at least since Harbor came on, we've not had to do anything with it.
Okay.
I mean, in the past, the answer is probably yes, but I don't know. I don't know when. We can talk to Manas about that if you just want some more data around that point.
Just out of curiosity, because when you roll back SCD, it may impact other application considering it's a shared cluster.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, this is a. If we have to roll back, it's because something catastrophic happened, right? So it's all about sort of getting us back up and running as quickly as possible, right?
Yep.
So.
Okay. Thank you for the great sharing, Shikar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Next, I think I'm open the mic to, the whole other participants to see if there are any topic we want to discuss in this meeting. If not, I'm gonna close this meeting and finish early. Do we have any other topic? Anyone? Silence. Okay.
I guess one question, Daniel. So after 2.2 comes out in sort of mid-late February, is 2.3, is that looking to be like 3 months later, sort of May timeframe?
Yeah. We are considering we need to roll out like 3 or 4 releases a year. And so depending on the workload we plan for 2.3, it may be out targeting May or June or even July. Yep.
Okay.
So if you have any requirement, now is a good time. I think the next few weeks you can open issues. I think I'm gonna also leverage the discussion feature on GitHub to engage other community members, to discuss what's the high priority for 2.3.
Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, actually, what myself, I mean, what the team here is myself, Manas, Govind, we're actually trying to put together sort of like I'll call it a PRD of things that we would like to see from Harbor, from both the feature and operational perspective, just from our experiences.
Yeah, that will be very valuable for us because a biggest goal for Harbor, I think for this year is to improve the scalability and make it more suitable for you guys to run in production for, in the enterprise environment.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
If there's no topic, I'm gonna, end this meeting. And thanks everyone for joining us. See you guys next time.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks again, Shikar, for joining us so early.
Absolutely. Yep. Take care now.
Bye.